Hey everybody, it is a little bit early to think about the 2026 Social Security Cost of Living Adjustment or COLA, but we are going to talk about what we know so far and when we are going to know more. Before we dive in, please take a minute and check out the link you see on your screen, fool.com/MattF. Get a lot of retirees leave a lot of Social Security income on the table. We don't want that to happen to you. So check out fool.com/MattF. I'll put the link in the description, and please stay tuned after this video for a message from the Motley Fool. You don't want to miss it. All right, so we're going to dive right in. Let me go ahead and share my screen. We're going to talk about the cost of living adjustment that is expected to take place in 2026. For if you're not familiar, the 2025 cost of living adjustment that went into effect back in January was a 2.5% adjustment for seniors, for all beneficiaries, really. Um, but so, according to the Senior Citizens League, this is the latest estimate. And this is not a government agency, it's not an official estimate or anything like that. This is a nonpartisan organization that you know, tracks Social Security and issues that affect seniors. So, according to them, the latest prediction for the 2026 cost of living adjustment is now 2.3%. So, if you had a $1,000 Social Security check, this would make it $1,023. This is a slightly upward revision than the Senior Citizens League's previous estimate, which was 2.2%. This would be the smallest cost of living adjustment that seniors have gotten since 2021. You can see the recent history of the cost of living adjustments here. I mentioned last year's was 2.5%. Before that was 3.2%. You can see where inflation spiked in 2022 and 2023. It was as high as 8.7% in 2023. That was the highest in about 4 decades. And before that, no very little inflation during the pandemic years, and really before that, there was no inflation in 2016 and barely any in 2017. So, in a historical the context of recent history, other than the past few years, a 2.3% Social Security cost of living adjustment is nothing too out of the ordinary. It just seems low because we're coming off of a pretty inflationary period. Um, so, just a couple of things to know about the latest estimate, that 2.3%. That was made after the president's reciprocal tariff announcements that sent the markets kind of plunging into volatility. Um, the expectation from not only the Senior Citizens League, but by a lot of prominent economists, is that tariffs could potentially raise inflation. Um, Currently, the expectation is for a pretty slight inflation bump. Um, the tariffs are on pause right now. It looks like we're going to get some trade deals. It doesn't look like the actual tariffs in place are going to be anything close to what we saw in the chart the president was holding when he made that announcement. We still don't know what it's going to look like eventually, um, but the baseline expectation is we're going to have slight inflation in the U.S. because of tariffs. Nothing too bad right now. As I mentioned, they only raised that estimate from 2.2% to 2.3%. But there are worries that tariffs could affect senior specific costs in particular, such as prescription drugs, a lot of which come from countries like Canada, and of medical equipment, a lot of which is imported from all over the world. So there are worries about that. Remember that inflation index used to actually calculate the cost of living adjustment is called the CPI-W, which is a measure of inflation as it affects workers, not necessarily senior citizens. That would be the CPIE, which puts more emphasis on things like healthcare and housing. Um, but unfortunately, that is not used to calculate the cost of living adjustment each year. So there are worries that inflation on seniors might increase in reality a little bit faster than the cost of living adjustment reflects. But so that's where things stand right now. So what does the data tell us? So it's difficult. It's very difficult to predict the cost of living adjustment. The Senior Citizens League estimate is not based on any actual data yet. We don't have the actual data that will be used. It's a common misconception that the cost of living adjustment is based on inflation over the full year, but that's not the case. The Social Security cost of living adjustment is solely based on third quarter inflation data, meaning July, August, and September. The Social Security Administration looks at the CPI-W from those 3 months, compares them to the same 3 months of the previous year, sees how they've changed, and that's where the cost of living adjustment comes from. It only is based on July, August, and September. We won't have July data until about halfway through August. So that's when we'll have some of the actual data that will be used to compute the cost of living adjustment. We'll know the official one in mid-October. After September's data is out, we'll have the entire third quarter. But having said that, let's look at what we know so far based on the CPI-W data this year already. So here's just the 2024 numbers. We can compare them with the 2025 numbers and see how things have changed. And one interesting thing to see, don't worry about what these are just the index numbers and how they compare to one another. The real column to look at is the percent change. And one interesting trend is that inflation has fallen considerably through the first 3 months of the year. This is CPI-W data, so it's gone from 3% to 2.7% to 2.2%. 2.2% was in line with the Senior Citizens League estimate prior to the tariff announcement. We'll have to see what it looks like in April and May when some of the tariff implications might start to be baked in. But what could change the Social Security cost of living adjustment from that 2.3% estimate? Tariffs, tariffs, tariffs. They are still a wild card. They were barely a factor in the latest cost of living adjustment estimates. I mentioned it went up from 2.2 to 2.3. Some economists expect the inflationary effects to really start in the third quarter. Again, the third quarter is the data that is actually used to calculate the cost of living adjustment. So if those economists are right, it could push the cost of living adjustment significantly higher than the 2.3% estimate that we just talked about. On the other hand, if the tariffs remain paused, as they are pretty much now, except on China, or don't happen at all through trade deals or anything like that, inflation could be far less than expected in the third quarter. You saw that January, February, March trend where it was going 3%, 2.7 to 2.2. Inflation could continue to fall, especially with kind of weak consumer spending data right now. So there's a lot that can happen. We don't know anything for sure yet. It's worth emphasizing that again. We'll have to. I'll keep you updated as we get closer to when the actual numbers come out. I'll do my best to answer any questions you might leave in the chat. I'd love to hear what you think about it. And stay tuned right now to hear a message from the Motley Fool. Thanks for watching. Here's an interesting fact. Most retirees don't realize they could be missing out on almost $23,000 in extra Social Security benefits every single year. The truth is, Social Security has hidden strategies that can help you maximize your retirement income, but most people never take advantage of them. Luckily, our sponsor, The Motley Fool, has got you covered so you don't make that mistake. If you want to boost your benefits and retire with more confidence, go to fool.com/MattF right now to learn more about Motley Fool Stock Advisor.